Welcome. We'll continue with the Generative Algorithms using Grasshopper by Zuban Khabazi. Basically, I'm just going to fly through, I believe, what it is, data management, which comes after Chapter 3. Let's just go right into the scripts and make this as simple as possible. What we can do is take a look at exactly what we're looking at. That's what I'm going to do, and I'm just going to get rid of any geometries that are in my Rhino window. Basically, they get into data management and do a nice job on finding a series of points. They generate a second series of points. They build lines between those points, and he does a simple reverse list, which is kind of like a tool flip matrix, which is going to come in handy for organizing data later on. And they make a really nice shift from this disorganized line connection between these points and these points to flipping, reversing the list and coming up with this nice little organizational lines coming together between first set of points and second set of points. And that's one example to start you off. The next thing they do is they jump into use an example, and I chose to grab a populate 2D of 100 counts and deconstructing that vector to actually sorting the lists of a very nice thing of the X components. Grab all the X components on what the values of these are, and in doing so you get a key and values list, which is similar to working in Python under dictionaries, pairing keys with values. And what happens is you end up finding a list item, and what they've done is taken the list item and said, let's find me the lowest value. And actually I use this instead of a digit scroller instead of a number slider, which is interesting to change things up a little bit. What you're doing. The next thing I do is they type in find a list item, and I decided to find the last item in the list. A nice technique is typing in the index number -1, which will give you the 19.98 dot and so on. Then I generate another list, basically keep going, and I decided to find a list length, which is not too hard to do because it's going to be around 100 because that's what the count is set at, but you could change that by sliding in a param number slider at whatever you want. Of course, I'd never bring up a number slider that way. If I want something between 0 and 100, I'll type in an integer value between 10 and 100, and that will give me that count. So basically, you can have 12, and you can have all the way up to whatever you want, changing the list length. What I did was I generated my own set of circles, and I decided to do a range of a domain. Keep in mind that the list length has to have a function tool. This is a very common practice of right-clicking, going into expression, and getting x minus 1 in there. So you're finding a range of those circles ranging in here. The one thing I could do, and I find interesting, it's not really that necessary, bring in a jitter node, throw that into a jitter value, throw it in here, and then you get another range of what could be. And then you could also throw on a seed value, which would jitter that up as many times as you want to get a different kind of selection of spheres. Of circles. Then they deconstruct an arc, keeping in mind the circle is just a very special case arc. And in doing so, you're not going to want to show that one because it's going to show you all these planes. If that does happen, you can go to display, and you can go into preview the plane size and take it from 12 down to something like 1, and I'll just do that, and that should simplify that. And just going back up to display, plane size 1, and I should hit enter if I actually want that to kick in and be a value. Now, did that work? Yeah, there we go. Now you have reasonable size planes. That said, there's your circles, there's your planes, and you're also ending up with a radius that's giving you a value. So you're coming up with a wonderful panel tool that's saying, okay, here are all the radii. And this is a great use of something that control geometries, which is really what this generative algorithm does extremely well. They dispatch the list of circles and say, find me a dispatch pattern that tells me what is smaller than or greater than 0.6. So if these are the values coming out as radii, it's going to select either the circles that are more or less than 0.6, A being the ones less, and B list being the ones more. What a great value. And if you actually change this value to be the smaller than or less than, kind of greater than or small gate for things to pass through, great example of using this logic and dispatch in the math organization of operators. You use these values down here to really generate some geometries. And I think that's really another heightened level of understanding when it comes to Grasshopper. It's done very, very well in Zuban Khabazi's work and algorithms. That's why I'm just following and showing these to a T. The reason I do these videos is because, you know, as I read these things and they come up on screen, and I'm scrolling on one screen and another one, nobody's really talking me through them. And there were some very key people on Grasshopper that I was able to listen to as they problem solved. And Christop's one of them that inspired me to do this. But another system I like to do is have points. And there's a little small example, lofted points, and then another series of lofted points above it. And what's happened here is they've actually used radians. So you've got pi from 0 to 2 pi, so you can change that for how far around you want that whole circle to go. You have a range that's going to interpret a domain out of that. Now, technically, I think you should get into the practice of putting in all the nodes you need. So we're going from 0 to 2 pi in a domain, and that's the same as letting that default from 0 to 2 pi. And that's just a technique that you cut corners and then you don't really understand what you're doing. You're grabbing this cosine and sine of those points, which generates these two, and then I'm lofting them, the one, and I'm joining them up. So they'll form the cylinder between these 2 points. Pretty simple, and just to show what's happening in those circles, I think it's a good practice to grab an interpolate curve, grab that, and grab it again down here. Don't try and funnel everything in with merge tools. It's okay to build a couple of separate scripts, and then you've got a really nice organization of a circle cylinder that can happen like that. Now, data management can be changed. I'm going to take that whole script and write it again all the way to here, except as I turn off this one and everything else before it, which would be good practice, just do a quick right swipe and get everything encompassed. Preview off, then go under here and let's just do preview on. And what happens is I take the same thing, generate this script and this one. You're saying, well, why is that and that and lofted? Not lofted, but why when I bring those together into points into a line is it ending up like this? Well, I've done a called index, and this is special what's happening here. We could take all of this off for right now and disable, and then take this point directly into a list shift item and have this as a secondary line item. Great examples to fly through until you figure it out. A shift list from here to here, and what's happening is I'm actually controlling this list. Well, this doesn't matter because this goes up to this data. Controlling the shift in this piece of data, so I'm actually making it pivot around. So shifting this, it's straight up and down to where it was. That I shift the bottom circle over and shift it over, and you have this really cool controlled woven geometry that we'll get into woven patterns later. And so that's just shifting the list, so the data coming out of the one, just to understand it clearly, the data coming out of this one is the points that are in there. Before I lift the top one, it's just shifting that data from this one over here. If you watch this data, and it's not the cleanest numbers kind of make sense of, if I shift that list one, you'll see that data just shifts one list. I lose that item down to the bottom of the list. So if I scroll down, to the bottom of this list, you'll see that bottom data of this one being being moved. And there is a little tricky thing that's happening here, and I'm going to show you that in those shifted lists. So I go from this item to this item, and I end up with these points between them. Is the reason they have these other things activated, and this is the one activated, is let's take that shift list and put that back into, let's take the call and pull it into the shift list. Let's take actually I'm just going to backspace to where I was, because that was working a lot better. Let's go back and just clean up the code to where I had it and bring this value back in, activate these two scripts, take the called information out as the start point. So I've actually removed, and you'll see what's happening here. I think it will activate. No, it doesn't recall when you're doing that. You've got to grab the same data and you've got to take your disabled, right click and hit enable. And now you're able to see that data does not. And the reason they bring in this list item is if you have it running off the initial one, you'll see as you count, it's counting 0 all the way around and then counting the last piece of item in the list twice. So you will see that in data information. They'll cover this in full detail, but it's something to pay attention to. There's nothing wrong with your algorithm. It's wrong with the data, with the way it's reading that data. So as we go in and look at all those points, you're reading the same point twice, which is causing a problem in the script. Let me just try and pick this one up. Oh, it's a little tricky to grab right now. Pick that up. You're going to see you're going to have their first data, and you're going to see it done again right here in this count, which is not what you want. 0 and 25. So you're going to have to call out that one item list, and what it does is it takes it down to here. So when you read it, that 0 does not read all the way around. And of course, you have to do that for the top list as well. So we go into here and we take a look at these points. And I'll just leave those points up, hit shift, and go to this section. You'll see you're reading those numbers again right here. And even though if I plug this into before the code list, if I plugged it into here and we took a look there, you'd see that we're reading 0 all the way around to 26, and 20 and 0 and 26 are overlapping. This is a simple little tool that's in your display section, which is right here, which is point lists, and you can do a vector displays and things. Keep in mind that things that have this ragtag at the end of it aren't giving you anything, but they're giving you a visualization on what you're looking at. So basically, I'm taking this, I'm taking a look at that point, I'm happy with that one. This one I'm turning off because I'm disabling that because I'm not going to use it. What I like about these two is I'm allowed a list plus the lines between it that pair up that data. And this is the data management that you'll get into. You'll get better at it as you go. Great examples in the Generative Algorithms by Zuban Khabazi. And I'm going to continue with, I think, page 34 or something, 36. We're going to go on to on tessellation and tiling afterwards. It's an 11-minute video. It helps make sense of all the algorithms that are on there. I'm not sure if they provide Grasshopper scripts, so you have to write them yourself the way I do them here. And I have no problem writing a script like that myself because those go away in my files. When I find something I really like say I wanted this interesting pattern of data management, I could grab all that, and I have a special plugin here called Snippets. So I could go in here and I could say, all right, let's take Wickerson Studios digital assets, and let's call that data management 001, and just make sure you hit the checkbox here and say done. What's nice is whenever if that script wasn't around and I had a new script going, so say this was all disabled, or I had a new script and there was nothing on that script, I could go up to this little snippets toolbar, go to digital assets, grab my data management, pop it in, and there's my whole script right there ready to use. It's one of the quickest way of bringing in small little snippets. And instead of making clusters, which gets into a little more work in making a cluster, which is for different reasons why you want to make your own nodes. Anyway, I threw that in as a bonus at the end for those that watched it and took an interest. And we will keep going, and I'm looking forward to going on tessellations and tiling 3.4 in this online free resource at Grasshopper 3D. I don't feel like I'm stealing anything. I think I'm making it my own, and I'm certainly learning through the process. And I'm here to kind of be that voice that you just kind of put in the background for newbies and people getting this. I didn't start Grasshopper till a year and a half ago in my life. I left coding 30 years ago when I was in math and computers and made sculpture for a long time. And I think after a long time of fabrication, you kind of want to get back into generative art making that can be so much more on the design end than the fabrication end of finishing. But you do need to know how to make stuff, in my opinion, so you can end up writing cool algorithms and making some creative projects. I hope I am finding a serious following of people that find this useful.